Welcome back to the Gold Newsletter. Welcome back to the channel where we interview CEOs and get a feel for their stories. My name is Kai Hoffmann. I'm the @JR Mining Guy on Twitter, and together with Brien Lundin, I'm the host of your channel here. And today I'm joined by the gentleman over at American Eagle Gold, and we'll be discussing their recent, drill results, but also start with an introduction. They haven't been on the channel before, so we're going to dive a little deeper on the story and have the CEO join us here in a second, Anthony Moreau, and also the lead technical advisor, Charlie Greig, will be joining us to explain some of the technical details. If you haven't done so, of course, quick reminder, hit that subscribe button. It's somewhere below me here. They keep moving it with every update, but it is somewhere down there. Truly appreciate that because it helps us bring companies on the channel, interview them, and also ask your questions. And of course, ask the right questions from an investment point of view. So let me bring my guests on the channel. Charlie, Anthony, it's great for you to join us. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Gold Newsletter channel.
Thanks for having us, Guy.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anthony, I know it's first time here on the Gold Newsletter channel. I think we need to start with a bit of an introduction. Why don't you give us a quick Cliff Notes, 60-second, 35,000-foot overview of the company, and then we'll dive into some of the specifics here.
American Eagle Gold, single asset. It's called Knack. It's located in Interior, BC. 3 pillars of a great project. We got access to infrastructure. We have grade and we have scale. Still early days, but we've been hitting on every single drill hole, copper and gold, some higher grades than others. We just came out with a really robust drill hole of 300 meters of 1.09% copper equivalent. But we have some other really great holes too. So we're starting to piece things together and excited for a really big 2024 drill program.
Fantastic, short and sweet. I like it. Really robust overview there as well. One other thing I'd like to catch up on before we dive into some of the specifics is cap structure. Do you want to run us through that as well, real quick?
Yeah, great question. 108 million shares outstanding. Warrants and options, another 20 million outstanding. I think the warrants are 8 of those 20. The rest are some broker warrants and some options. Options won't get exercised until this company sells. We have that policy across the board, so any insider pretty much don't sell. So in terms of cash, 5 million cash and growing, and we're fully funded for hard dollars through the end of 2025, and funded for a full 10,000 meter drill program this year.
Fantastic. Is that let's follow up on that real quick. 5 million, is that all hard cash, or is there some flow through?
I think about 1.5 is hard dollars and 3.5 is flow through.
Gotcha. And 20 million warrants. What's the exercise price and expiry on those?
It's about 11 million warrants. Exercise price for the majority of them. Sorry, there might be more warrants than that. The exercise price for the majority of them are around 30 cents. So, 8 million of those exercise in May. Some of them actually have been exercised. We don't talk about this publicly, but a big portion of those actually got exercised in December below the strike price, which is really interesting. So that doesn't happen very often. I don't know if that was an investor or a proxy, someone trying to get into the stock, get a position. But regardless, they gave us some hard dollars with no fees, and obviously have a long-term shareholder jumping in at a price that was above what they paid for.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, at the current price level, you should be seeing constant exercises, I'm assuming, as well. Shareholders exercising those warrants, some cash trickling in there, I guess, as well. Fantastic. Anthony and Charlie as well. Let's discuss the history a little bit of the Knack property first, because it's a fairly new company here, American Eagle Gold. Why don't you catch us up there? How did you get started with the Knack project?
Well, I've said the story a bunch of times, but we had a project in Nevada. It dusted out, and I had an uncle who worked for 50 years in copper-gold porphyry projects. Loved him dearly, and he told me, he goes, "This Knack project is the real deal." He goes, "You have to have it. That Nevada project's impossible. This is the real deal." He said, "Been working on this for 50 years," and he said, "This is the second best target I've seen outside of Grasberg. Not going to necessarily be Grasberg, but he says that's a good way to start. You have targets, you almost have permitting, just get it." And I'm kind of at the point a lot of investors are now. What I did is I looked at the history of this project, and I didn't want to get it at first because I saw 20,000 meters of drilling, saw 6 different companies that owned it previously, and I thought, if they had this much drilling, this many companies looked at it, it's not going to work for us. It's not going to be a good enough story. And my uncle came to me, and he wasn't aggressive very often. He was a very nice guy, hated conflict. And he said, Tony, you're a CFA, you're a bean counter. He goes, listen to me. I'm telling you right now, this is the real deal. Get it. And then he walked me through the whole thing. So this is what I do with investors. Yes, there's 20,000 meters of drilling, but he said, Tony, he goes, what was the average drill depth of this? I said, I don't know, Gary. He said 169 meters. He goes, not very deep. He goes, what they're looking for was surface, gold and copper. And at the time, the last major drilling was in the mid 90s. And he said, what was the price of copper and gold? And I didn't know, but I looked it up and I had an idea, but it was about 50 to 60 cents a pound for copper and about $400 an ounce for gold. And he says, it didn't make sense economically with those prices. Most deposits are actually working now. So, forget all this history of the drilling and look at the recent successes people have found in terms of porphyries. A lot of the big targets are at depth. So he said, you got to drill deeper. And he goes, now you got access to the infrastructure, because before it was just forestry. And he said, now you got access to it. He says, you got to get it. So we actually ended up buying it. And within 3-4 months, we were drilling. And actually the First Nations, which is a big question we get from a lot of people, the chief, who's a great guy, he actually contacted the ministry himself to help us fast track this permit. And we started drilling in August 2022, and my uncle saw the core, and he goes, "I'm right." He goes, "This is the real deal." And we, from our first drill hole, we had 125 meters, over 1% from surface, which is the best historical drill hole ever drilled on this property. And since then, we've had a lot of really successful holes. That 300 meters of 1.09% was great, but we also had 475 meters of 0.62, another hole, 800 plus meters of 0.5%. From surface, a lot of great grades. So Kai, just kind of summon that. That's how we got the project. We've been drilling ever since. Tech's now a partner with us. They invested 3 times within 7 months, and now they own 19.9% equity stake. I guess the sad part of the story, I want to give this guy respect, was my uncle. So he saw that drill hole, but he actually died before any of our results actually came out. So, I believe we have a great team. I know we do. I know we have great geology, but I also know my uncle's kind of looking up down from heaven and kind of smiling. And that's another kind of ace up our sleeves there. I think there's a real reason why we took on this project. I believe it's going to come to fruition.
Absolutely. No, that's a good story. Like, and I'm sure he appreciates the results now, and he saw it already, so he was happy. Uh, you know, back then. Um, Anthony, he's like, when one thing's like, and I hear that a lot, and I've heard it at a lot of conferences as well. Like, well, we're going to do it different. We've taken a different approach. You said you're the sixth, or actually the seventh owner of this project now. Well, what is different? Is it really just deep drilling? Is it really that simple?
Well, they had a big property, and no one had ever drilled the property. So, we put together all the geophysics and we figured out where to drill. But if you look at the previous owners, they weren't kind of focused in one area. They're drilling sporadically over the whole thing, trying to find something. So first of all, we're just focusing on a smaller area of interest where we know that there is mineralization. Yeah, the big key is longer drill holes. Average depth of our drill holes is 800 meters, and we're doing incline holes now. So the area where we're drilling, where we're finding most of the copper and gold, if you want to talk different, no one's drilled in that area. So 2317, no one had drilled within 250 meters of that collared hole. So we're focusing on an area that's coming up with really great grade that no one has ever drilled. And what we're going to do now is, which no one's done, we're going to do a systematic, drill program. So we're going to drill a grid going south to north across the whole property. And we're going to figure out, what the resource is, hopefully at the end of this year. We know it has scale, but while we do that, we're actually going to hopefully increase the size of the high grade zone that we have. So that whole 2317 combined with 2311, 2308, that's a high grade pocket that's currently open to the west and open south to north. So while we figure out the scale, we're also going to figure out that high grade zone.
Gotcha. And Charlie, maybe you can jump in here as well, but run me a bit through the targeting process here. Like you mentioned, you've drilled 250 meters away from the nearest drill hole. Like what led you to drill there? What kind of basic geology have you done before?
Well, it all comes down to Gary Artman and his partner originally. They looked at all the old data, compiled everything, and looked at the geophysical expression of the thing, and that's why Gary really liked the target. Really, it's not a well exposed property, Kai, and where we're drilling right now, in fact, it's quite heavily overburden covered. So there basically no outcrop. So you're kind of going geophysics and drilling. So not being a lot of drilling, it's geophysics. So Gary and his geophysical partner, Steve McMullen, identified the fact that there was an old ZTEM survey with good data that showed that this part of the property had legs, like i.e. down to depth. And so that's the way they sort of laid out the initial target. Anthony, heard about us and contacted us, and we said sure, we'll give it a shot. And we drilled 7 holes last year, most of them just vertical holes, trying to get to depth to test this deep geophysical anomaly. And the holes are mineralized all the way down, not always the same, but some of them had very good grade at surface. Some of them had very good grade partway down. Some of them had very good grade deep, but they were all mineralized basically top to bottom. So these really good grade intervals are within broad intercepts that are still of kind of mineable grade. So it clearly showed it was a big system, and we drilled that over like almost 750, 800 meters along a north-south trend. So it showed for sure that it was big, it was deep, and now what do we do? So it comes down to what are we going to target next?
I was going to say, like, maybe to summarize it, like, what was the main goal of phase 1 here? Is that the right like terminology? Like, is it phase 1? It sounds like it, but what was the main goal there?
Yeah, I guess the main goal was to test this deep VTEM anomaly, and it was a success. I mean, it was real. There's no doubt it was mineralized. We didn't really know, what the controls were. Kai, when you're drilling, holes that are hundreds of meters apart, it's difficult to link things up from hole to hole. So, with very little surface information, i.e. no geology exposed at surface, and very few shallow holes even in that area, and no core from those old holes. So very little idea of what exactly they hid in there except for numbers. We didn't have too much to go on, but basically it was drilling that north-south trend, and we nailed it. So then what do we do next? And that brought us up to this year. So that was the first year. They're long holes, so it takes a while to drill those long holes.
Absolutely. Like, let's summarize the drill program last year as well. Like, how many holes, how many meters in total, and like how far apart were they?
So the first year, we have to back up to 2022. So our thing was, let's hit the top of a porphyry deep. So we stayed by the plan, and that's why we did 4 of our holes vertical along the fence. That's where we thought maybe the top of the porphyry starts. Luckily, with hole 1, we hit really high grade surface that they had never found before. But we wanted to be disciplined and keep on looking for that deep porphyry. So if we would have done things differently, I probably would have drilled some more incline east to west, but we didn't really know what we had then. So all of our holes were along really narrow fence, probably a little bit too close to the Babine porphyry stock. And last year it was 7 holes around 6,200 meters, give or take. So then fast forward to this year, we had some money from Tech. And what we want to do is we want to actually keep on looking for that deep deposit. But we want to start off with a really great hole. So we drilled, we drilled a bit of a step out away from hole 1 from last year. And we did an east-west incline, and what we hit was 775 meters, 0.5% copper equivalent from surface, and that was our big whoa time, because we realized what we had to the south wasn't a small high-grade zone; it was actually a big high-grade zone. So it changed our whole philosophy, and based on last year's drill program, or 2022, we had very little geometry or geologic information, because 4 of the 7 holes were straight vertical shots, and 2 of the 7 were north to south holes. So not giving a whole lot of information, especially since it's along a fence. So this year, all of our holes were east or west incline, long, big ones. And the whole point was just try and figure out the geology and geometry, come up with enough good grades to give our investors confidence, have our stock go up, which is our equity, but really give Charlie's team some geology to base on their drilling this year. So fast forward, our first year, all of our targets are based on geophysics. Even this year is based on geophysics, because all the holes we had in 2022 were vertical or along a small fence. This year, for Charlie's team, we're going to have a full budget for them, but it's all going to be based on geology. The best pathfinder to copper and gold is copper and gold. And this would be the first year we actually put, a big investment into our geology, about $500,000 to help those guys target. So This year we're looking at a bigger program, at least 10,000 meters. They'll give us 12 to 13 holes. We're doing it north to south across a grid, and hopefully really show that there's continuity of this high grade. I think that's a big important thing for investors.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And hole 17 was a big highlight hole that you just released. I think it was last week. Run us through that hole, because the market, especially Mintwit, was drooling about it. And I've seen it all over X, or Mintwit, and MinX, you probably have to call it now. So run us through that hole. Why was the market so excited? What was your, Charlie, maybe what was the secret ingredient in that hole?
Well, I think the big thing is the grade, really, and the grade times the width. I mean, 300 meters at plus 1%. You can mine that in a number of ways, and it was also close to surface. So basically, I think what that does for the market is just, okay, this is this Knack thing. We've seen some big intercepts. Some of them are kind of BC grade. Mineable from surface, but way down deep, it'd be different, but might be different. But this is good grade right at surface. You can kick off a big project. I think people now recognize that this is a big system with a lot of copper and gold, no matter what grade it is. But if you can kick it off with a large volume of good grade, then you can start. You can make a mine out of this. It's just so much easier to get your payback when the stuff is near surface and it's good grade.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Kai, what I like to say, it's Chile in BC. That's a Chilean hole. You saw in BC. That hole is good anywhere in the world, especially BC, where you have access to infrastructure. Look at Jose Maria. That thing sold for a boatload of money, and I think their average grade is 0.5% copper equivalent. And I mentioned before in that long explanation, and sorry for people listening, but that was all based on geophysics. So don't think this is going to be our best drill hole. Now we're actually going to base it on geology and have some proper targeting, and this is just the beginning. So that's what really kind of excites us. Like, this thing could continue to the west, continue north. We just don't know yet. So to hit that kind of based on geophysics is just absolutely amazing. So people are really starting to pay attention. So I guess big question for a lot of investors I'm hearing on Mintwit is what's the entry point?
Good point. What is the entry point? We're at 33 cents, I think, today. 33.5, I think, as we're recording this. I'm wondering, like, based on the excitement of Mintwit as well, like, why isn't the stock trading higher? And you mentioned warrants earlier. Do you think the warrant exercises are holding the stock back a little bit? Because let's be realistic. That was your last drill hole, I think, that you put out from the last campaign. The question is now, what is the next news item as well? So what can we expect there in terms of maybe price action catalysts as well?
Look, we're not far off from a drill program even starting. So like, how far is May from now? It's 4 months, less than 4 months. So drilling's gonna be starting pretty soon. So we want to position. At some point, you have to figure out when you're gonna take it. And 60% of our shares are tied up. 20% with tech, 40% with institutions. And I like all that volume and that price action. I wish it didn't go up actually as fast as it does, because you do see selling of the stock, and then a lot of people are watching. They don't understand why the selling's happening, and it's bigger than them. So they take this sell action as a bad thing, but I actually take it as good. There's more people entering the stock long term, and in the end, I'm just hoping that sell side kind of evaporates and eventually will. And you talk about near term catalysts again. Drilling's going to be starting before you know it. But we have some other tricks up our sleeve. Who knows? Can tech come in again? Can another corporate come in? There's that stuff. We're going to be giving a presentation in a couple of days, a big technical presentation, help the geologists and those people really kind of understand what we have. And we're going to be announcing our drill program. So we have other catalysts down the line, but the big thing is drilling. Drilling is the thing that gives you sustainable value. And, I believe there's a big inflection when we passed that 30-cent resistance last week when we traded. And, I think it's only upwards from here, but, I'm the promoter, so don't take my word for it.
No, fair enough. You mentioned tech, and one of the questions I've of course scribbled down is like, what's tech's motivation? What's their intention? How are they involved in the process there, Anthony and Charlie?
Tech's motivation is one thing. They're not investing in us because they like investing in junior mining companies. Junior mining companies are the minor leagues. It's a farm system for these big companies. We have one of the best geologists in the entire world, exploration geologist, BC, Charlie Greig, working for us. He's the coach. And they really invest in companies that they think can become a mine. So they might invest in 10 companies. If 2 of them become a mine, that's great for them. Obviously for big companies, not going to speak for tech, they'd rather buy a company for $500 million that's fully de-risked as opposed to $40 million, which is our market cap now. So they're going to keep on lending us support. We're going to keep on drilling, and we're going to prove to the retail, to investors, and to tech that this can be a mine. So perhaps we create a liquidity event next year, the year after, but that's completely what we're working on. I worked for a company for 10 years. Their job was to build mines. It was very difficult for them. I'm not going to pretend we know how to build a mine, but we do have a team that knows how to discover a mine.
No, absolutely. The track record is on your side there. Also, you mentioned First Nations earlier there, Anthony. I want to follow up on that. Who is the First Nations that you're working with, and what's the relationship? Just give us an overview there, please.
Yeah, they're called Lake Babine Nation. They're great folk. They really love. They like mining. There's a lot of history of mining in the area with the Bell Granile. It's unfortunate. You got a lot of investors and people that paint the same strokes with all First Nations across Canada. There's over 600 different Indigenous groups and nations across Canada. They all have different needs, different amounts of money, etc. I'm focused on Lake Babine Nation, and we've had a really great relationship with them. What I always tell when we first got there, I made a call every single day, and we talked to the chief and the council, and I said, "This is our project. This is who we are. This is how we operate. If you don't want us to be here, we don't want to be here, but we want to start off the relationship right." And from that, I think they gave us a lot of respect. I told you earlier they called the ministry, helped us fast track our permits. But I treat the First Nations the same way I treat my family at home. It's all about honesty, transparency, and just providing communication. They just want to know what's going on. It's their land. This is 2024. It's a brave new world. It's their land. We're working together. We're partners on it. And I think they respect that. And quite frankly, we're friends with a lot of them there. They're really nice. And it's about communication. So that's probably the last thing I worry about when I go to sleep is the First Nations supporting it. They want a mine. They want jobs. They want their people to be educated. I think we're on the same side for everything there. So the relationship's good. That's a bit of a story about it.
Yeah. No, fair enough. No, thanks for running us through there, Anthony. Let's talk, just give me through your press releases here as well and the relationship with Orap. Just want to get a feel and understanding for it, because they've been super supportive, I think, in the past as well. Just run us through that, because you repurchased some of the project, or all of the project, back from them. Run us through that transaction. What is the relationship with Orap now?
So Orap spun us out. That's how we became public. So when we got spun out, they had 10 million shares of ours. We had 10 million shares of theirs, or 5 million. So that was kind of called a plan of arrangement. So that's kind of where our relationship spun from. We're part of the Orap group. So we have a whole suite of companies. Basically, the only thing we have in common is we have great leaders, great geologists, but we're all kind of focused on Canada. The whole stuff that happened with Panama, I think that changed the game. And if Panama, which is kind of seen as a safe jurisdiction, kind of goes up in flames and wants to take back a mine, I think everything's on the table. So you want to be in Canada, that's our focus. But for them, we share everything. So we share our lawyers, share our accountants, share our payroll. The only full-time employee at the company, American Eagle, is me. So most of the money that we have goes into the ground, very little on G&A. So anyways, we got spun out from Orap, and stay with me here. We needed some money when we were drilling. We kind of had a feeling hole one was going to be good, but we only had $1.5 million to drill. So how we can get that money when our results weren't out, but we got to give the drillers money to extend our program. Our stock was at 2.5 cents. So what we did, so Ore Finders, they actually did a flow-through deal, I believe, in 2020, or 2019. And then what happened was COVID happened. So when you have your flow-through, you usually have 2 calendar years to spend it. Because of COVID, I think they got an extension of a year or 2. So they actually got more time. During that whole time period, they actually did a deal with Agnico, where Agnico JV'd on the project. So Agnico was actually putting all the money into the ground. So all of a sudden they're stuck with X million dollars that they had to put in the ground to find projects for, but they couldn't put on their own projects because Nico was spending the money. And we needed the money, and our share price was too low. So we actually problem solved together. So Ore Finders actually gave us $1 million of flow through money that we had to spend, which we wanted to spend within 3 months. So that was 2022. And what we gave them was like a deal. So we said, we'll give you back $1.5 million in either equity or cash within 18 months. So that works for both of them, and they get hard dollars back. So fast forward to November 7th, 2022, our stock went from 3 cents to 30 cents. And then we finalized that deal almost a year to the date after we made it with Ore Finders. So we actually gave them $1.5 million of our equity. And we bought back that 20% option that we actually sold to Ore Finders for the $1 million. So that kind of worked out. And why we did that then, it's just de-risking. We thought 20.5 cents was pretty low, but it was de-risking it, but also allowed us to remind everyone Tech is still an investor. So Tech actually went and topped up to match their 19.9. And at that point, Charlie Greig actually put a sizable amount of money for a citizen and for anybody actually, and he invested. So not only did it show, well, Tech invested 3 times, but also Charlie Greig, who's from GT Gold, really smart geo. Now he's putting his own hard dollars into it. Well, people started taking notice on that. You saw a little bit of price action. So that's the whole relationship we have with ore funders. It's a little bit complicated. It's almost easier to do it on a whiteboard, but that's kind of the background.
Fantastic. No, I appreciate that overview. And Charlie Greig is sitting right next to me, so I got to ask you, Charlie, what has you most excited about the project in general? Why'd you put your own money into it?
Well, I guess, what I see is it's strong on all fronts. I like the geology. Maybe initially people don't think it has golden triangle, porphyry, copper, gold type grades. We'll see about that. We're getting there. We're there maybe in some of the holes for sure. But I also see the access and infrastructure. I mean, you can drive right to the drill here. And so really, if you were really running a big drill program and wanted to run it all year long, you could. And that's huge. It's way more expensive to develop a deposit into a mine, in a place like the Golden Triangle where there's lots of mountains. Winter is pretty tough to work. It can be done, but it's not easy. It'll be a lot easier here. So, when you can drive right to a deposit, that's fantastic. And we haven't quite made it a deposit, but I think we will. So lots of things going for it. And the First Nations relationship, Tony's really handled that very well. And we got great partners that way. So I see it as something that actually could, turn into a mine.
Oh, fantastic. Glad to hear it there. I really appreciate that, Charlie. And Anthony's like, or Tony's like, a lot of companies have peer group comparisons in their slide decks. And if you were to sort of throw your or American Eagle onto a slide like that, who would be your peer group? Who do you get compared to recently?
Well, my first instinct would be compared to other kind of projects outside the Golden Triangle in BC, but it's hard to do that because our drill results have been a lot better than any of those peers. So I can't even do that. In terms of something that's recently, a lot of comparisons have been made to Hercules Silver, just because it's more recent. They've had really great drill holes, and it's a good comparison. Look at the jurisdictions. Idaho's a great jurisdiction. BC is a great jurisdiction. We have a great partner in Tech. They have a great partner in Barrick. We're both pulling out really great drill holes. I think Hercules Silver put them on the map, higher grade for sure. But, we also have really high grade, but then our intervals are actually longer and they're followed up by, other great intervals. So a little bit of check marks from both sides there. The big difference between Hercules Silver and us is they're worth about $175 million. We're worth around 40 million. So for two companies that are so close in terms of the quality of their asset, but have such a big delta in the price, that I think that creates a big opportunity for investors. And that's what a lot of people are looking at right now.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, Hercules Silver, definitely a name that's been thrown around the MinX and Mintwood community many, many times. So fantastic. Maybe last question there, Anthony. It might be a bit early, but how about Metwork? Have you started any of it? And what are the plans for metallurgical testing?
We're not there yet. Charlie, maybe you want to jump in on the Metwork. I think we get asked that a lot. I think maybe at the end of this year or next year we'll do it. I think we want to first kind of figure out, can this become a deposit? Is it big enough? Does it have the grade? And then you kind of follow with metallurgy after that. But, we have no immediate plans to do it, but possibly at some point this year or next. It's just about a budget thing. If we want to do a proper metallurgy test, how big is it? How much is it going to cost? And are we better off putting our flow through dollars in the ground or sorting out the metallurgy? Look, Bell and Granite ran for 30 years. They had really good met there. We have tons of bornite, chalcocite, chalcopyrite, which means we're going to have probably pretty good metallurgy. But yeah, I guess investors want to see that. But I think the first they want to see how big can this be and how much high grade can we have.
No, fair.
I'd agree with you there. It's it's about the sulfide species, lots of bornite, some chalcocite, and lots of chalcopyrite, and not that much pyrite in the in the better grade parts of the zone. So it's just looking like it'll be very, very easily just kind of an empirical thing. And again, Grand Island, Bell, both open pit mines to the south of us, not very far away, were very successful and had great recoveries. And it's not that much different. I mean, it's different, but not from the sulfide species. It's looking probably even better for us. So I think it'd be the empirical evidence is there that right now that's really all you need. And Tony says better to put your money into drilling.
Just to add something there too, Kai. I hear a lot from the investment community, and they always think that only one project can work. So it's either Hercules Silver or American Eagle, or it's only Filo or us. Like, many different projects can work, and you need many different projects to work in order to fuel all the copper that's going to be needed in the future. So don't think about it. It's us versus them. We want lots of big successes out there because it means investors have more money to invest in other potential successes. And look, we're $40 million market cap, and everyone wants us to be perfect. Where's your metallurgy? What about this? What about that? Well, look at our value. It's 40 million. If you want to see an almost perfect project, look at Filo. It's worth almost 3 billion. So we don't have to be perfect at this stage. It's early stages, but the one thing investors should look at is our success rate. So how is our progression? We're at 3 cents. Now we're at 33 cents. We've shown them that we have scale, we have grade, we have a great team. We put most of the money into the ground. Our discovery hole, it was great, but what you see with a lot of companies is their holes that follow up aren't as good. Our holes have become better and better. As I mentioned a couple of times, it's all based on geophysics. So see what happens based on geology. So give us time, and we're going to get there, and we're going to have a big season this year. And look, in Charlie, I trust. So off to the races. Find your entry point if you want to invest. We're not perfect, but we want to get there.
Fantastic. Just sort of to summarize as well, I know you haven't announced the drill program for this year yet. I think it's a bit early. You just put out the last drill results last week. But run us a bit, again, like I mentioned that earlier, but run us a bit through the next catalysts. What's the next phase going to look like?
We're going to have a drill program probably in next month after Roundup, but we're doing a big technical presentation on Wednesday. Today's Monday. I don't know when this is going to be released. So on the 17th, anybody can join us on Zoom, live webinar. Big catalyst, announcing the drill program is going to happening. Drilling is going to start in May. Results are going to come out soon after that, and just getting higher grade out there. And then probably expanding that program at some point. Maybe we'll be able to announce that beforehand, but we might have to wait till the season starts to get some more price discovery. I don't love where our stock price is right now. I think we're up for some price discovery. And there's other catalysts, big funds coming in, big investors coming in, corporate deals. You just never know. I can't give away too many of my tricks yet, but there are going to be a lot of catalysts, and this is just beginning.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for, the initial introduction here to American Eagle Gold. Really appreciate that. By the way, last question. Is there a name change in the cards? I'm missing the copper part in the name.
We're in the process of changing our name, but I said we can be called Crispy Crunch Exploration. If we come up with really great drill results, does it really matter what we're called? And for investors, I mentioned this before, we focus on putting most of our money in the ground. It's got about $50,000 to change your name. I think that goes a lot further by putting in the ground and finding more high grade discoveries.
Fantastic answer. Thanks so much for that. Awesome. No, appreciate that. Charlie and Anthony, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the introduction. And to everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate that. If you haven't done so, leave a like, leave a comment as well. What do you think about the Knack property? What are the odds? What are the chances? Are you invested? Let us know. We'll definitely relay any of the questions you might have to our guests here as well. And I'm sure I'll be catching up with them next week in Vancouver. I'll be at around Roundup and the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. Join us there. I'll be a keynote speaker. I'm presenting on the 21st, I believe, at 1:40 p.m. Mining 101, how to capitalize on a high gold price. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back with lots more here on the channel.